Hello, welcome to How to Succeed During a Pandemic. I'm Wendy Lally, your host, and I'm thrilled that you're able to join us today because we have a very exciting show. We have two ladies with us who are not only successful career women, but are also members of a very famous organization that I'm sure many of you belong to called Toastmasters. And they're going to tell us about that organization as well as their own careers and how it's helped them in business and helps other people as well. The theme of this show really is resilience, because during this time, all of us need to depend on that quality in ourselves. After all, we're being challenged by a major disease. It stopped the economy. It stopped relationships dead in their tracks. We can't even shake hands anymore, at least for a little while longer. And we've all had to make some adjustments in our lives because of that. So while that's affected all of us, some of us are doing a little bit better than others. We're not only managing to survive, but actually thrive. And I thought that it would be an interesting exercise to have a show where we would get to meet those people that are not only surviving, but thriving and kind of getting some energy and knowledge and perhaps honing a power they didn't know they have during this time. My job is I'm a marketing copywriter and strategist. So in the course of my career, I talk to people, find out about their businesses, and then tell the world about them. That's why this show seemed like a natural fit for me, because I'm doing that right now. And now I'd like to introduce you to our guest, Shanita Akinde, who is the president of ViewMasters Toastmaster and an incredible professor at Columbia College. She just shared with me she's been there 22 years, and I have met her before. I worked with her actually at Columbia, and I'm just thrilled she could join us. And Victoria Rock. And Victoria has her own business. She coaches people in making presentations to corporations and more. And she has quite a story to tell us too, because she had a business before then that was very successful and now has segued into a second business. Talk about resilience. And so, ladies, welcome. I'm thrilled that you could join us. And Shanita, why don't we start with you? What I'd like you to do is introduce yourself to the audience and tell them about your work at Columbia and your work in your I know you're an author, and tell us about your books. And most of all, tell us about Toastmasters.
Of course. And thank you, Wendy, for having me here. I'm Shanita Akintonde, and I just repronounced my name because I like to say Shanita like Tada, like a magician, and Akintonde to help with the pronunciation, like I can do it. I can tonde it. So as you pointed out, I am a 22-year academician at Columbia College Chicago. But what's more important and exciting for me is that this month I'm launching or relaunching my own business, which is Shanita Speaks LLC. And Shanita Speaks LLC is a reiteration of a company that I began back in 2003, and now I'm bringing it back to the forefront in 2021. It's a media enterprise that focuses on women and young adults, and I teach them how to lead better, how to listen better, and how to love better themselves and those who may look different from them. That parlays into my role as president also of Toastmasters ViewMasters Club, which you pointed out as well. And in that capacity, I'm doing all of the aforementioned items, but doing it amongst club members who are on a trajectory, especially in the pandemic, to present themselves in the best way possible. And so Toastmasters, and under my leadership helm, is able to do those things. Last thing I want to say is you mentioned that I'm an author. I very much am an esteemed and proud author, contributing author to several books. And my latest one is called Leading from the Heart. And as I said before, it's about love. And Leading from the Heart is a story about my great-grandmother, my maternal great-grandmother, and how she taught me with her third grade education, all of the tenets, every single one that I need to lead and be successful today.
It reminds me of that book, Everything You Need to Know You Learned in Kindergarten. And isn't that the
Absolutely.
truth?
Yes. Yes.
Victoria, let's hear from you and find out what's driving you and what led you to Toastmasters.
Wow. Well, thank you, Wendy, for inviting me to speak today and talk about Toastmasters, which is one of my favorite pastimes and ways of constantly improving my speeches or just storytelling overall. And so I had been in business for over 38 years, owning a court reporting services in Chicagoland area, and I sold that business in 2018. My tagline for the court reporting business was that we are historians of the spoken word and guardians of the record. We do court reporting, transcription, videography, and worldwide video conferencing, and my favorite clients are litigators. And so from there, I sold my business in 2018. I spent a year in consulting and bringing all my clients over. And now I finally can not only get commissions from that type of business, but also act as a court reporter. And in the midst of all of this and COVID, I decided to start another business, and that was called Victoria Rock and Associates, which helps businesses learn how to do a 5-minute pitch before the supplier diversity departments of large corporations. And it's mainly women and minorities that I work with. And I just finished up with a big workshop of 27 business owners that were in the range of $1 to $10 million in revenues, selling to big businesses that were from 10 million to $50 million. And in a matchmaking session, it was just a blast to be able to do that. So, but my Toastmasters comes in how I actually help teach people how to be able to do their pitches. And it's just been a wonderful time of learning from people like Shanita and the different people that are in Toastmasters.
My understanding is that Toastmasters began as a way to teach young men, this is in the 1920s, how to speak in public, because it's always been the greatest fear that most people have is public speaking. And that, of course, if you want to be a manager, it's a very important skill for you to have, because you're going to be presenting to clients and you're going to be leading the group and presenting to the group. And I'm thinking that in this time, when we're all on Zoom, in one way it may be a little bit easier. On the other way, I think it's much harder. So, and are you having sort of special courses of how to pitch and present on Zoom, or is what you do kind of automatically translating to that?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, Wendy, because when I took this helm as president of ViewMasters, Toastmasters Club, it was smack dab in the midst of the pandemic. And on one hand, I had to take a step back and say, well, Shanita, you're in the middle of the pandemic. You're going to have to shift the way these Toastmasters meetings have traditionally been held, because we were in person. But then I also said, what a wonderful gift this is, because not only does it allow me to express myself from a leadership platform, from a communicative platform, and all the ways in which I was planning to do anyway. The bonus on top is now I get to do it in the virtual space. And so while I'm also navigating my way through that space, it also gives me an opportunity to make sure that the other members of my chapter are able to do the same thing. And so to your point, one of the things about us being in this space of Zoom is that it does come into people's homes, into their places where they reside or where they're moving and shaking, so to speak, in their most personal spaces. So unlike when we were in person-to-person meetings, we knew where we were. We knew we were in the office. We used to meet at Willis Tower, downtown Chicago, big, tall building, which is why we're called ViewMasters. It's a great view of the city. But now, because we're on Zoom, I may be in your living room, Wendy, with you while you're on the Zoom call. Vicky may be in her dining room, someone may be in their car. So it changes the dynamic of how we not only have to help people learn how to communicate, but it also gives me an opportunity to give instructions or help give guidelines, so to speak, on how to do that and navigate that better. The second point, though, people can be distracted because unlike when we were in real spaces and we could see one another, we knew where people's eyeballs were. Now we can turn off the camera, right? Or we can be doing multiple things in the background. Our dog is barking, cats are meowing. So there are a lot of other things that people have to deal with that we have the fortunate opportunity, and I specifically have the fortunate opportunity of helping people learn how to now give their speeches and give their communication practice in those settings. So it's been both a gift and a challenge in this new era that we're in.
Do you find that too, Vicki, with your profession? You have the same?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's, I am so excited about the prospect of just continuing to expand. And, especially with networking today, it is so hard to network if you aren't already in different circles. And yet it makes it so easy being able to, be in Zoom or use Zoom as the possibility to get across the whole country and, for that matter, across the whole world and communicate. And so how do you communicate is the biggest thing, to get your point across, to differentiate yourself, all of those things. And it's with the Toastmasters projects that you get to learn how to do all those different styles and everything else, and giving your different speeches and telling your stories. It's just a lot of fun.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's really a good point. I mean, Toastmasters, you think of people just getting up and speaking, but from what you said, I gather there's different kinds of speeches, and there's different styles of speech. So would you guys talk about that and how Toastmasters involves people and gives them a chance to do that?
Well, Toastmasters, first of all, was established back in the 60s. And to your point earlier, Wendy, I know that it started off on one kind of trajectory under a very more traditional auspices, right? For a variety of reasons. Society was different back then. The role of men and women were different. So today it prides itself on what it calls leadership and communication skills. And as you climb that ladder, you get to a level called Distinguished Toastmaster, which I'm proud to say I am a card-carrying member of that club. That's when you've checked all the boxes according to what Toastmasters lines up from a project-based perspective. And once you've completed all of those things, you become what's called a Distinguished Toastmaster. So we are a very, select group, so to speak, of individuals within Toastmasters. That being said, the way they've structured it is so easy peasy because they have a template for templates. Everything in Toastmasters is written out for you in the minutest of details from the projects you get to choose from. There's a system called Pathways, which you now can do virtual. People have an option of logging on or asking for materials to be mailed to them, and say you want to learn how to podcast, or you want to learn how to be a comedian, or you want to be someone who gives a ceremonial toast at a wedding or some other kind of occasion. There's a manual for it, and the manual has a template all the way down to suggested topics, suggested ways to use PowerPoint if you're going to do a slideshow to accompany the speech. I mean, so it's it's designed for people to not have to do the extra work in terms of framing their speeches. Where it comes in to what Vicki was saying a minute ago is you infusing your own story, your own perspective, your own way, your own stamp, so to speak, on it. But they give you the frame so that you can start not from ground zero, kind of mid-level, and work your way up from there.
That's great. That's really useful. And to the point of it being a leadership training ground. I mean, that's what I always thought of as Toastmasters too, because all the people you knew were going to rise in the company, they send them off to Toastmasters for lunch. What is it? It's twice a month, right? That the meetings are.
Our club, ViewMasters, meets on the first and third Friday of the month. And if there's a fifth Friday in the month, then we meet then too. But each club has its own kind of autonomy. So it works out according to members of each individual club how they want to meet. But we meet twice a month, yes.
But I'm sure right now it's probably evenly divided between men and women, right? No?
Absolutely.
Yes and no. I mean, yes, in terms of, but can I be honest? Can I be real? I know I can with you all. The with the exception of our vice president of education, which we call the VP of everything, Bruce. I'm giving you a shout out, Bruce Chambers. The worker bees, though, in our club and what have been the women, you know, we tend to carry the heavier load. I'm just saying. I don't know about other chapters, but ours is pretty female dominated, which is why it rocks. No. But yeah, but I agree. It's pretty evenly split across the Toastmaster landscape. I would say men and women are very equally involved.
And Vicki, I'd like to talk a little bit more about your business because it sounds like it's directed at really helping people that might not have had a mentor or kind of been brought up in the corporate world, giving them a boost to come up. And I'm thinking women and ethnic minorities and people that when they did come up, and of course many of them did rise in corporations and politics, etc. But it was more the exception than the rule, and because it was so hard, and there was a lot to discourage people. So it sounds like you're really kind of right in there, pulling them up and giving them a helping hand at the very moment when they need it.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why I started my second business, and that was number one, the opportunity. I work closely with the Women's Business Development Center in Chicago, and I won a pitch contest in 2012, I think it was, or something like that. It was called Ready, Set, Grow. And from that, my pitch video was shown before 1,600 small businesses.
Wow.
And at a convention. And from there, the city of Chicago noticed me and asked me if I would actually help teach people how to pitch their business at their small business expos, which were given every other month at different city of Chicago, the city colleges across the city. So that on top of, as being a woman business owner, I had to, WBDC actually had these matchmaking sessions where you were standing before one of the huge corporations like AT&T or something like that, and I would have an opportunity to pitch my business to them. And so it was through the teaching of Toastmasters that helped me fine-tune my way of doing my pitches. But I do remember clearly how nervous I was going before a huge corporation like that, trying to figure out what do I say to them, how do I make myself distinguishable and unique before these huge businesses, and how do I say it without stuttering too much. So that was the idea behind me starting my own business, but it was with having the framework of Toastmasters and helping me be able to practice my speeches and coming up with the different stories that makes it interesting to talk to me about. And then having the opportunity with WBDC and the city of Chicago to help boost me up in being able to actually teach people using video and things like that to work my business and grow my business.
Yeah, and that adds a whole other element to this story too, which is video. And I was just speaking to an ad agency that I work with and about websites. They build websites, and suggesting to them that every website they build should have some kind of video in it, because it's become the expectation of presentations today. And you think when you go online to get any kind of information, it used to be it was a lot of text to read. Now it's a lot to see and watch because many of those stories have been turned into video. So I think that's something, and I wonder, is Toastmasters addressing that? Not only getting to speak in front of a crowd, but getting to speak on video, which can be a whole different feeling about it because you're not getting feedback from the crowd. You may be in a tiny space all by yourself.
Video is such a wonderful tool because it allows you to go back, watch yourself, study your movements, your eye contact, your content, make notes, rewind, watch it again. And so I think that it is something that is essential to the speaking profession in general in order for you to get better and hone your craft. I love this woman, Vicky, who's on this call with me because she has been one of the pioneers in our club for video and us being a club that was able to record ourselves and each other and study it. I used it. I can't even begin to reiterate how much it benefited me, and I'm sure others in our club have benefited from it as well. And so I agree 125% that video is where we are. And with Zoom or Meetup or whatever app or virtual platform people are using, the beautiful thing is that it's kind of built into the system. If you hit that record button, so it's not that you have to hire somebody and pay $5,000 and have them standing there anymore with the video camera. Now the beauty of it is that you can get it, from your computer and go back and watch it. So absolutely.
And Toastmasters really addresses that as part of the whole teaching aspect of the group. And especially, I think we just finished up with a big open house that addressed, how do you present yourself on video, on Zoom, and in a virtual manner. And so Toastmasters really deals with all these subject matters that helps anyone who wants to become a public speaker and learn what's needed and necessary in order to have you come off in the most professional way.
That is so important, and we're kind of coming to the end of this show, but before we get there, this opens up a whole new thing that I want to address, and why people should really look into Toastmasters. If you're starting your career, if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're just somebody who wants to work for a company and climb your way up, those people have always been ideal candidates, I think, for Toastmasters. But what I think is so interesting today is you have a lot of people who don't relate that well to people one-on-one. They relate to their phone. They're doing that and texting each other. To really communicate with people, you're going to have to learn how to speak in public. It's just that simple. You cannot lead people doing this, to a certain extent, yes. But even if you're doing a selfie, even if you're recording yourself and then going to share that, learning how to speak, learning how to think on your feet and do, what do they call it? You're speaking
extemporaneously.
Thank you. Couldn't think of the word. My age kicking in there, but I know it began with a E or something. Anyway, you have to have practice. You have to learn techniques, and Toastmasters is really an ideal way for you to do that.
Okay, so I just want to share one story about a young lady who was a member of the Jesse White Tumbling Group, which you all may be familiar with. They perform all over the city at various venues. And I was asked to come in as a coach, a specialist for the youth group as part of my ascension to receiving distinguished Toastmaster accolades. So this young lady in this group was a talented superstar, a shy little flower. And I remember her just pretty much trembling almost at the thought of having to speak in front of a group. Fantastic gymnast, but when it came to speaking, just as many people are, afraid. So what I would do is I would construct meetings like our regular Toastmasters meetings with a group of youth. And one thing about Toastmasters that's beautiful is it allows you to assume different roles. You don't have to necessarily give a speech. You can be a timer. You can be what's called a grammarian, which counts how many times people say and You can be a general evaluator, which is someone who comes up at the end of the meeting and says what worked and what didn't. So what I did with this young lady was I allowed her to serve in different roles such as that over the course of this one summer, with the buildup being her giving a speech. We were shooting for her giving a 3 to 5 minute speech at the end of the summer. That was it, which can sound like 3 to 5 minutes, but to her, it might as well have been 5 hours. And what really warmed my heart is when we got to that last day of our meeting and it was her turn to speak. So she went last of all the speakers on that day. And she walked up with trepidation to the podium and she looked at her mom was there, family and friends, we're all rooting her on. She opens her mouth and for was like 30 seconds, nothing came out. And of course I'm thinking, oh, she's not going to be able to do this after all. But what happened at the end of that 30-second soundbite is that young lady recited a poem that she had created about gymnastics. And it was so beautiful. And at the end, everybody was crying and we gave her a standing ovation. Now, it wasn't even 3 minutes. I think it may have been 2 minutes, 25 seconds, but it didn't matter because what we saw in her was such growth from where she had begun, where she wouldn't even open her mouth really to say hello, to the point where she gave this beautifully written poem to this room of over 100 people. And she did it with such confidence that when I see her now, because we kind of keep in touch, oh, baby, she's a rock star. I'm like, is this the same person? Is this the same person that didn't want to say anything? So I think support to what Vicki was saying a moment ago, having a network, having people be in a safe place and environment really works tremendously. And now she's in law school. She's going on to be a lawyer. So we may see her in the court, down the line. So I don't know if Toastmasters can be totally credited with that, or if I can be totally credited with that. But I have seen from that young lady a growth that has led her to a whole nother path that may not have happened had she not been introduced to public speaking through Toastmasters.
That is a wonderful story, and it's a wonderful way to close this episode. I am going to have to wind it up, but because we're reaching 12:30 and I got to go off. But I want to thank you both. This has just been a very inspiring, super session. And I want to encourage all of you, if you aren't members of Toastmasters yet, to please look into it. Or if you know someone who you think could benefit from it, please, we'll have information about it at the back end of this show. And you know the name, Toastmasters. Ask Google.
It's ViewMasters specifically, Wendy Lolly. But it's Toastmasters when I'm saying our club is ViewMasters.
I also want to ask you to please come back next week. We are at 216thenet.com every Monday from noon to 12:30. And if you miss us on the station, you can still see us on Facebook and on YouTube. Just look up the page, Succeed in a Pandemic. Name is a little different than the show. Succeed in a Pandemic on Facebook, and you'll see the show on video, and I hope you'll do that. So for now, goodbye, and please stay well, and just for a little while longer, wear your mask and stay in. Thank you all.
Thank you. Love you, Vicki. Love you, Wendy.
Yes.
Bye.
It was great. Love it.